on this campus, I think the identity that stands out to me the most is being African American. I used to always joke around with my friends and say I'm lucky I'm light-skinned on this campus, because I feel like if you're dark-skinned compared to a light-skinned black person, you can be treated differently. And it's also funny too, because I'm the president of the Hispanic American Leadership Organization, so that likes to throw a loop in a lot of people's conceptions of what they are. I know a lot of people, just until this year, they thought I was Hispanic, or at least half Hispanic, and they found out I was fully African American after, especially I cut my straight long hair off, and then now they see a fro and now they know I'm black. So I think that's one of the strongest identities that I've recognized on this campus, is mostly me being African American. So I feel like how my stereotype has affected me is because I'm able to recognize a lot of things that people say, and especially when it comes to my race, and other people don't realize it. A strong example is literally just last week. I was in class and we were given, it was the students who were given a project, and they gave us 7 people. They just made up names and ages, and they had to say, we had to choose which of the 7 people would get the liver or not, and so we had to kind of rank them. Well, I remember one of the person's names was Shaquita, and when people read this name, they thought it was hilarious. They were laughing and giggling and trying to give a nickname to it. And I was looking at it, and the picture that they had given, and if you go on Google and type in stereotypical black woman, there's a stock photo of a heavier set black woman doing this with like an attitude. And so that's what they typed in, and they made up this name for her called Shaquita. And what was really interesting to me too was in that name, there was the actual name of my sister's middle name. It was Shaquita in the middle of it. And that's I have a twin sister, and her middle name is Shaquita. And Tiana used to always talk about how she would never put her middle name down on any of her papers when they would ask for it. Even SLU, I don't even know if they know her middle name, because she was afraid of being judged for it. And that's the exact reason why. When people talk about that racism is over, things like that, I don't believe that. So, especially since the Clock Tower Accords occurred last semester, being from St. Louis, I was so happy to see something happen in the city. Especially at this university that has such a strong standing, for us to finally take a stand. And when I went to classes and I saw people look at me, and you could tell they would hush down just a little bit when I would walk in. I'm mostly the only black person in the class anyway. Besides, I have 1 or 2 other people sometimes in my other classes. And I know when they see us, they like hush down a little bit. And then when we talk about it, when our teachers would talk about it, they joked about it like it was funny, and it just wasn't funny to me, because it affects so many of us at this school, especially African Americans here, how we're judged based off of our color. I can say I'm judged less because I'm light-skinned compared to my other brothers or sisters who are darker than I am, who have a different speak or a different tone than I do, that I talk like this and I don't talk like this. People judge you based off of that here. Whether or not they say they do or not, they do. We've seen it, we get the looks. And so it's something I've definitely strongly noticed here. Even also with myself, when it came to my hair, I remember when I got here, and I took chemistries. I'm a health sciences student, so I took Chem 1, Chem 2, Bio, things like that. And I would go to their office hours. And at that time, during the summer, I had cornrows, and I had like these braids twisted all the way up in a little poof thing. And I had like this little ponytail. I thought I was really cute at that time. But I remember going to my instructor's classes to get help, and the way he looked at me was just purely of, who are you? You're not in this class. And I remember like asking questions, and like his face was just looking at the girl with the braids and the long ponytail. That is what I was. I could tell based off of the look that I was judged off of it. Before, I was mistaken twice for a janitor on the campus when I was working in Dubourg Hall. And I know why. I mean, you don't have to really tell me why. I know it's happened to other students on this campus too. And it's hard, but I want to stay here and show people these little minor mistakes that they do that can have such a strong impact on African Americans here. So during the Clock Tower Accords, what was different is all the jobs that I hold on this campus. So it was important to me because I was African American, but also I'm a resident advisor for Fuse Hall, which is the building right next to the Clock Tower. I'm also work in the admissions office as a university ambassador. I give tours, I answer the phones when people call. That semester was probably one of the hardest semesters I ever had here because I was so conflicted. I wanted to be out there, and I felt so separated from so many people who thought differently about what was going on. I was so happy this was occurring on the campus and having dialogues about it. And I was going out there and I was speaking and I was supporting and I was explaining to people. I felt like every time in between my classes I was out there trying to talk to people about what was occurring. And not everything went right with the clock tower cores. We're not saying everything went right, but we think the discussion got there, and we were so happy that it did. During that time, I think a lot of maybe my residents were even looking at me maybe slightly differently because they knew I was gone most of that night because I was out there at the clock tower, and maybe they were afraid of speaking to me. I used to be afraid of that. At admissions, I was worried that they would see me out there so often, they would be worried about what parents would say to me when I would give tours. But I gave them the answer that I wanted to give them, that SLU allowed us to have this dialogue on campus, and I was happy. Now, did this leave me cursed out many times on the phone? Oh yes, I was called the N-word twice. One guy, I guess, just recognized by my tone of voice I was African American when he called and he wanted to speak to the president about what was going on this campus. And he was just like, you know what, you people need to just get off. And I'm not saying that you're an N-word, I'm just saying all the other N-words need to get off this campus. And I remember just having to hang up. And it was at that time, it was hard because I would break out into tears. But my boss is absolutely fantastic, and she cried too when people would call and make these comments. And all the other people I worked with in my office were so fantastic at supporting everybody on this campus who was doing what they were doing. And actually, that was probably what surprised me the most, because I thought we would get more setbacks in the office when people would come and visit and see the campus when that was occurring, but it didn't. It was nice to have that support. But being African American in the office and the resident advisors, when we would have meetings about this, it was hard because I felt like there was a strong clash between African Americans and everybody else. Really amazing too about SLU is that half the people on this campus who I think are African American may not actually be African American. They actually have a lot of roots who are actually just African. A lot of my good friends' parents are from Africa, or they are from certain regions of Africa. So it can be very different in how we're perceived. With myself, the way I look, how I'm light-skinned, the way I speak like this. Before, especially my freshman year, I had straight cut hair. I thought I blended in perfectly fine. I didn't see almost any difference originally. But then when I had other friends, like my friend Irene, when she came in, she was darker skin, she's a darker skin tone. She has an afro. Her last name is Apokua Champong. She'll be really happy I said that correctly. Things like that. It makes it harder for her though, because what stereotype she's going to get is different from me. She's going to get almost even worse because people say like, oh, you're from Africa, this, that, and the other. The things that have been said to her are ridiculous. But compared to me, it's much different, because I feel like people see us lighter shade and may treat me a little bit differently, which I've definitely seen on this campus. It wasn't until I feel like maybe I hang out with more of the black crowd when people may see me slightly differently. They see me hanging out with them, so then they can kind of step back a little bit, which I've seen that with some of my friends before who are probably not true friends. When I hang out with more African Americans, they see me get loud, or we talk about certain things, especially in our culture. You will see black people congregate together and get loud, especially because we're so excited to talk about things. When I see a black person on this campus, part of me gets so happy, and we'll like text each other like, I just saw a new black person, just because it's such a rarity on the campus. It can be hard for other students to point this out because they may think that SLU is a diverse institution, but they don't go to a school where they see people that mostly look different from them. I swear, if one student who was a different race from myself stepped foot on the Harris stove and lived there most of their life, they would see it completely differently, because everybody there is black. But here, mostly everybody is white. So I'm used to that. I grew up in a suburb. It's nothing to me, but I know others who didn't. And so it can be difficult in that case, but you know, we deal with it the best we can. So So when it came to the different things happening on campus, it's hard for me to even call them protests because I prefer to use demonstrations rather than protests, because I think people, when they think of protests, they think of it so negatively rather than something powerful. And there's been so many demonstrations on this campus and off campus, and I think people are comparing things that are happening off campus to on campus. What they see is people looting QT stores and burning down different things like that. And first, I cannot judge other people based off of their anger. When you silence so many people who are so voiceless and they finally break, I'm not saying that it was the perfect way to do it, but it's kind of the consequences of what happens when people get so angry and that emotion gets built up inside. Do I want to do something that's more nonviolent, especially on this campus? Yes. So I think a lot of people, when they saw a huge group, hundreds of people come onto the campus, they got scared, especially since so many other people on the campus were black. It's hard to, people always used to say like it's not a color thing, but it kind of is. Why do you think DPS officers were all around? I'm just making sure, of course, everything went okay. So when it came to things that were happening on campus, I'm not saying, once again, everything went perfect. We had our arguments, we had disagreements within our group. People saw the demonstration happening on campus with a different endpoint compared to others. I'm not saying that we did not get in arguments in between ourselves. Sometimes we're not always completely unified. Everybody fighting for Mike Brown's shooting was not completely unified. We went about things differently. Some people wanted something different, more radical, and some people wanted something a little bit more slowly, and then there were people in the middle. I felt like I was almost in the middle. I didn't want to destroy or burn anything. When people were talking about looters, I just hated when people started comparing the entire movement to something one or two people did. Media loved, Fox specifically, loves to concentrate on the negative. Absolutely loves it. They never want to look at what other people are doing to try to show people or try to dialogue people into what's occurring on the campus and in the St. Louis area. So here we had plenty of disagreements. We did, but at the end we got what we wanted. We got Pastello to listen. We got the SLU community to actually listen. I feel like only a couple people may have taken something good out of it. When I had to discuss this with people, I hear some people actually realizing they had a change of heart, like, oh my gosh, you're actually right. And other people, they just got defensive. They got very, very defensive, and you can't break through that. And I was like, oh, well, you could be wrong. I could definitely be wrong, 100%. But I've learned to really listen after a while, and it's really hard to do that, especially to say that you're wrong. I've had to do that many times before. But when I know I'm right on a certain aspect and I'm trying to explain it to people, when they don't listen to me and they just say, but let me play devil's advocate, but my cousin is black, but my best friend is black, he lets me use the N-word, why can't I do this? I see them over there doing that. Don't use that example to me, because it's not a relevant argument. That's probably the most difficult part of those statements from students, because it's hard for me to explain the ABCs to them when, after doing that for so many times, I have a breaking point. And I've had those breaking points many times before where I just want to yell and scream at people like, why don't you get it? Why do you not get it? When it seems so obvious to me. But I have to remember and take a step back and think they've lived completely differently from how I've lived. So they don't always see it. So sometimes I have to take a step back, breathe, and break it down step by step on how certain minority groups on this campus and in the United States have been broken down. And they always say, like, who is the system? Who is the man? And I always have to go through this whole topic and subject with them. It's frustrating. It's very frustrating. But I'll do it. I will 100% do it. If that will get you to understand why I feel so passionate about the way I do, we'll talk. We'll have a discussion.